was, when Harumi and I got engaged, um, my family, my parents, and their spouses were all really welcoming of her into the family. And it wasn't like I was anticipating there would be any problem, but you never know. And it was an unusual, a little bit out of the normal. And, but everybody was very super loving and receiving and so forth. So I validating, I guess maybe would be the term. So that's my example for that.
Thanks, David. Yeah. How about you, Matt? A time that you were witnessed, like your full self was welcomed and witnessed.
Right. Well, when I first came back from teaching in Oklahoma, I met Nathan and we made it Facebook official. And I didn't give any thought to the fact that my students can look at my Facebook. So one day in class, one of my young ladies just asked me point blank, "Who is Nathan?" And I thought in my head, okay, I can come up with a lie. I can say he's my buddy, or I can start living my authentic self. I can be that open teacher. And I just came clean and they loved and embraced it. And nobody's ever, it's been a really successful, welcoming community.
That's amazing. Thanks, Matt. What would you say, Matt, about how your own circles of life and experience have been widened by teaching, by being a classroom teacher?
Well, after coming out, my students approached me about the Gay Straight Alliance at school. I've had other teachers who don't feel as comfortable being out come and talk to me as well. I'm kind of a confidant for a lot of people now, just people who need that person that they can go to. Even my students who are not LGBTQI+, they have that representative, oh, wait, this guy doesn't fit every stereotype, maybe, and those connections are made. And even my kids who I didn't think would like me, at least tolerate me very well.
How about you, David? Do you have anything to share about that?
Yeah, and I want to just follow up on what Matt said and attest to that, because I know, and it's always impressed me how well liked you are among our students, and it's a testament to what a good teacher you are. So kudos on that. One experience where I learned a lot from teaching, and I guess you could say my circle was widened. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I taught in Mexico for 2.5 years and lived there in Monterrey. Harumi and I both did. And that experience really transformed me in a big way, because I mean, I'm living in a different country with a different language and just different situation, and got me a little bit out of the, viewing everything through the prism of America as the center of the universe kind of thing. And that was really important, and got to know a lot of lovely people there, and got to know a little bit about, things in Mexico and all the problems and, things they have going on. But they took Harumi and I under their wing, all of our friends down there, and it made such an impact on me. And I'll never forget that. And I always would tell my students when I came to be a high school teacher, and when we talk about whatever, Mexico, when we were in geography class, or maybe when I was just telling them about my biography, about that experience, to try to, help them see that or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's important, as I was pondering some of these questions, to demystify the other is good. We got a community here among our students. A lot of them are sort of coming from a rural place, and not a lot of, they're not real cosmopolitan or whatever. And there can be sort of maybe a curiosity, but also a fear. And so I always wanted to try to sort of let them know, hey, you know, there's a big, beautiful, fun world out there with all kinds of variety, and, you know, have at it and go for it. There's nothing to be afraid of. And,
Mhm.
you know, living in Mexico helped me see that, I guess, in a way. And also having spent quite a bit of time in Japan too.
Right, right. I'm going to ask a follow-up to you, David, about that, and then I'll turn back to you, Matt. But I'm wondering about if you have a story to share about a time when you kind of bringing those other perspectives or including stories from kind of, you know, non-dominant heritage or non-dominant histories, like really made a difference for someone in your classroom.
So I couldn't think of a particular person, but I'll tell you something that I did regularly that I think that I know had a big impact. And that was, in addition to my teaching history and geography and stuff, I would use my classroom funds and sometimes my own money to buy food for the students. And we would like explore these, you know, other cuisines of the world, sometimes kind of exotic. We've done sushi a few times, you know, and I would bring it in, and you know, we would taste it, and the kids love it, and they remember. You know, that's something they'll remember. They may not remember, you know, the Bill of Rights or whatever, but they'll remember the food stuff. But the most specific thing was Yassine's. I got Yassine, and he actually came to the school and spoke to one of my classes, and we had, you know, food throughout the day for all the classes, and got to
And just in case, I think everybody knows Yassine's, but just in case someone doesn't, say what kind of food that is.
Yeah, well, it's Middle Eastern food. Yassine is a Syrian refugee who came here and started the great, you know, falafel place, and is kind of a local celebrity now. He's been so successful, but he's a wonderful guy. And we were talking about all those kinds of things. I forget exactly if we were talking about Syria specifically or refugees or, you know, the whole thing. But we saw the little video that somebody made about Yassine, and then he spoke, and, you know, there is nothing to dispel that fear and weirdness like eating, you know, somebody bringing food. Here's my food that I'm sharing with you, and that smells good, and nobody's going to get weird about it, you know, and be ugly. And that's just such a great way to break down barriers between people, and allay those kind of fear or unease. You know, it's a lovely way of doing it. So that's something that I guess I'm kind of proud of for having done. And as I mentioned, Harumi also came out, you know, dressed up in her kimono and made sushi and stuff like that.
Sure. One of my favorite things to teach is A Raisin in the Sun. And a lot of my, not even a lot, 99% of my students come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. And I can draw that connection between the youngers in A Raisin in the Sun and them. And then we talk about Langston Hughes's poem, What Happens to a Dream Deferred. And we relate that, and I can show them, hey, you can see a barrier, but maybe that barrier is not as big as you think it is. Maybe you can connect with this other group of people. Maybe you do have some similarities, and then we can build on that, and we'll talk about the Harlem Renaissance and how this is a story of people who just want to survive. They just want to thrive. And what is the American dream? We bring in Dr. Martin Luther King's speech on the American dream. We annotate that speech, and then they even turn it on themselves. Well, then what's your American dream? And it really immerses the kids in a culture that sadly they don't get a lot of exposure to.
Right, right. Do either of you, this is a little bit of a different question than what I thought I was going to ask you. So, but I'm wondering if either of you have anything to reflect on how that kind of teaching, bringing in those other perspectives, even outside of your own experience, how do I want to ask this? the way you feel about doing that, has that changed in the last 4 or 5 years?
Go ahead, Matt.
100%. It's changed because it's become more relevant. My students know what's going on in the world, and they know lots of different ways to separate, but they don't know enough ways to bring together. So my teaching style, my living my most authentic self, my sharing stories with them, in my classroom, I call all of my students friends. And even when they're getting loud, I'll say, all right, friends, y'all got to calm down, and we'll bring it down. And that relationship, God, I hate to sound trite, but the way I handle my classroom is by formulating and building those relationships. And then I can use those relationships to show it is a small world after all. I know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
And just to add on to that, and I'm no longer in the classroom, I'm retired, but just recently, you know, in terms of building the relationships, I found that, there were students that would come in and they probably had heard through the grapevine, oh, Butcher, he's this liberal, whatever, or, they had preconceptions and stuff, maybe negative. But I found that by being nice and hopefully funny and charming and showing that I knew my subject matter and, being likable, that went a long way. And I could, that more than anything might make a difference and might make them rethink, maybe some ugly prejudice that they'd gotten from home. And then, well, Butcher's a really likable guy and he's not like, into the, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. I also wanted to add that now, the recent changes, teachers are under incredible scrutiny, especially in social studies and English and literature and stuff, which are more, I guess, controversial. And so one has to have a lot of tact, finesse, and all these things as you approach it, because you're under a microscope.
And
more so.
I prefer, that's why I got my master's in special education. I prefer to work with those kids who have been beaten down and battered and abused by the system, because I relate to those kids in so many different ways. I too was kind of beaten down and battered by the system. And that's why I call them friends when they're in my classroom. We're in this together. This is hard for you. It's hard for me. It would be hard for you by yourself. It'll be hard for me by myself. So why don't we join teams and attack this together? And I mean, David can tell you, I have a pretty good success rate, especially with those typically lower achieving students in my classroom. They do things that they have been told their whole lives that they couldn't. And I love it. They love it. And then they graduate.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful thing. That's a good thing. How about you, David? Anything you want to say about being in an intercultural marriage or other parts of your identity that inform that for you?
Well, that was, I found that the students were super curious about that. There wasn't, I never really got any negativity about it. I mean, there could have been that I just didn't hear, but I don't think so. It was mostly just kind of, ooh, that's cool. Or how did you meet her? And, and they, when they did meet her, sometimes she would come out there, everybody loved her, of course. And, yeah, I mean, it was all good. I guess maybe in a way it might have shown some people, hey, you can just, whoever you want to love, you can love them. You don't have to conform to this like, everybody's expectations and stuff. And you can even,
Mhm.
marry somebody who looks different from you or whatever, and then
Right.
normalize that, and they can see, oh, it's a happy, successful relationship.
And foremost,
Matt, yeah.
thank you for the support. I I know when I first started coming to FOOF, it was almost like I was celebrated for being a teacher. And teachers, we get celebrated 1 week out of the year and then kicked every other week out of the year. So it's really nice to belong to a congregation where being a teacher is kind of cool. It's something to talk about, and it's respected, and it's just really nice. So first off, thank you very much. Second, if you feel so inclined, be present, continue to be present at board meetings, when curriculum's discussed, when you know your child's teacher might be having a crappy day, i.e., any full moon or any day after any kind of holiday or celebration. Be kind to your teacher or your child's teacher if you need to contact them. Be nice in the way that you contact us, because that really goes a long way. uh, I had to make a parent phone call today, and I dreaded it so much because this parent was so mean the last time that she was at school. And I called her, and the kid liked me. So you would have thought we were old friends, because this parent was pleasant when I was on the phone with her, and it was so nice. So
Yeah.
remember that we are people.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Anything you would add, David?
Well, I mean, I'm very concerned that public education is under assault for people that want to destroy it. And public education, quite frankly, is sort of like the bedrock of our democracy. It's kind of this thing that holds us together in our diversity. Historically, it's been something that has bound us together through our common values and things, even though we may not be the same racially, religiously, or otherwise. At least we had these core tenets of things like democracy and the rule of law and separation of church and state and all these things that I think are being eroded. And there's attempts all over the country, a concerted attempt to sort of hijack these school boards and push them in a direction, or even just do things to sort of just dismantle public education altogether. So in order to benefit maybe just, well, parochial schools and things like that. So as kind of to echo what Matt said, get out there and vote and try to raise awareness about it. And let's, hopefully our community will rally around the teachers and realize, in public school altogether, and realize that we're all in this together and we need this for our kids. And